There's a coal seam up in Birmingham. Well, there's one in Wyoming that's, I think, what, 500 feet thick? That's a lot of coal. Noah's flood would be a great explanation for that. But see, I'm not claiming Noah's flood and the Bible is scientifically provable. I think it's right, but I'm not demanding it be taught. The problem is,
yes,
and you guys are
Kent. Yes, you are.
You are demanding that your religion of evolution be taught. Evolution is nothing but a religion. It's something you believe in. You didn't see these coal seams or these water seams put down, mud seams put down.
And you didn't see the creation, Kent, and yet you named your organization Creation Science Evangelism, but you didn't observe that.
It is scientific to believe that. I think it's scientific to believe somebody made this pencil, even though I've got no idea who or where or when. It is not common sense to say this pencil happened by chance. You guys believe your body you're sitting in right there happened by chance. You think
but
you are
observe that pencil being created. You didn't observe the universe or Earth being created, though.
I didn't observe it. No, I believe it's true.
So it's not science.
What, you didn't observe the Big Bang either, and you didn't observe any animal change to a different kind. So that's not science either. Evolution is.
So you're admitting that it's not science. If you say it's not science either, then you're saying you're agreeing with me. But don't change the topic, Ken.
Listen to me. Science, it means the word knowledge. We know dogs produce dogs. We know cows produce cows. We know the Bible says they'll always bring forth after their kind. I think that's scientifically evident. I think it's all we've ever seen. I think it's common sense to say dogs have always produced dogs. We see them go, you want to go back in time? You can't go back in time. Evolution is not science. It's a religious.
When we use telescopes to look back into space, you're literally looking back in time because you're observing light that came from many, many years ago, from very far away, like a lot of light years away. So that's like literally looking back in time.
That's just an interpretation.
No, it's not a figure of speech. You're literally looking at the light from many, many years ago. So
tell me how we look back in time on the Earth. How do you look back in time at these dirt molecules?
Well, we can't look back in time in the same way, but we can observe the effects of what has happened over time. We can't.
You're aware of forensics, right? Like, do you think that in like courts of law, they're literally like they have to have a time machine to go back and look at what happened to make their case? No, they use evidence to reconstruct like what happened to make their case in a court of law. Like that's how forensics works. That's how our legal system works. That's how science works. It's based on an empirical weight of the evidence.
Okay, then we've been asking for a year, Donnie. We've been asking for a year. Where is the evidence for these trees of life? Nobody's ever seen a cow produce a non-cow. You claim you believe this kind of stuff. You want me to pay to teach that to the kids, that everything came from an amoeba. Do you believe you're related to a starfish, Grayson?
Yeah, we have genetics and we have fossil evidence that justifies that phylogenetic tree that you're showing. Like we have evolution has made testable, verifiable predictions that have been verified. That's why it is science.
No. We have every farmer in the history of the world who will testify every animal or plant they've ever crossbred turned out to be the same kind, recognizable. You plant corn, you get corn. You might get a new variety of corn, but it's always corn.
But do you think that the theory of evolution would predict anything different?
Your theory of evolution does predict it was different in the past. Look at the chart. They teach the kids we started like a protozoa or an amoeba and turned to a human.
Well, you believe the goalpost now because I asked you, would the theory of evolution predict that dogs would give birth to non-dogs or cows would give birth to non-cows? Because that's a straw man. Yes. Because it does not make any such prediction.
Grayson, we're gonna limit the over talking.
When I didn't ask you about the past.
Grayson, we're gonna limit the over talking. We're just gonna let Kent answer the questions.
Yes, Grayson, your religion teaches. Look at the chart. Your religion teaches the protozoa turned to something else. So protozoa apparently did not always produce protozoa. All we've ever observed in the laboratory is protozoa make more protozoa. But you guys believe by faith that protozoa turned into a biology teacher over millions of years. Yes, you do believe that things can change to something else. Now they say, well, of course we believe dogs produce dogs. No, you don't. You believe protozoa produce dogs. Don't you?
No, that is a straw man.
So we believe dogs don't produce dogs. Is that what you're saying? That evolution believes that?
I'm saying, look at these charts in every textbook. They show a family tree where the amoeba or the protozoa or the single-celled creature of some kind
I'd like you to answer, not say, look at the textbook. I would like you to answer. Are you saying that evolution teaches dogs don't produce dogs?
Evolution teaches dogs came from something non-dog.
That's not an answer. It's a yes or no question.
You are the one trying to muddy the water. I agree. Dogs always produce dogs. That's all.
Does evolution teach something opposite of that?
Evolution teaches if you could go back in the past, the dog came from something that was non-dog.
That wasn't my question.
Yeah, we're not asking you about the past, Ken. We're actually asking you about predictions that evolution is making, and how what you're saying is not a prediction of evolution.
Well, if evolution teaches that dogs will always produce dogs, then you're in the creationist camp.
No.
Did dogs come from something non-dog?
Yeah. Did chihuahuas come from something non-chihuahua? Yes. In your worldview, that is also true. They came from dogs that were not chihuahuas. So you agree that differentiation and like cladogenesis can happen.
They had common ancestors.
Wait a minute. I agree. There are now 339 recognized breeds of dogs. Most would not survive in the nature on their own, but that does not prove dogs came from a protozoa. Do you believe all the creatures is this chart accurate that everything in all life forms came from a single-celled life form? Is that what you believe?
Your charts are very inaccurate. No. So
this is not, well, then help me get it out of the book. This is
in the book. It looks your images are from like children's books
from the 70s.
I got biology here. Where's my latest one? I just got a couple days ago. They do teach this stuff all the time. Here's go. Last universal common ancestor. Do you believe there was a common ancestor between humans and bacteria and pine trees? This is a modern chart.
Why do you ask questions you already know the answer to?
You do believe that. And I'm saying,
then why did you just ask me that if you already know that I believe it?
Because it's stupid. I'm trying to wake you up. This is really dumb to believe everything came from a protozoa or a single-celled creature. Yes, if you're saying you now believe that dogs always produce dogs going forward, you're in the creationist camp. You're trying to hide the fact that you believe dogs came from a protozoa. You don't want to admit that because it's stupid. It just really is. All we've ever seen is protozoa make baby protozoa. Bacteria make baby bacteria. We've never seen any of what you guys believe. It's not science.
If humans haven't observed something, Kent, does that mean it didn't happen?
You're again moving the goalpost.
Answer the question.
Science deals what we can observe and study and test.
If humans haven't observed something, does it mean it didn't happen?
Oh, no. A lot of things happen I didn't observe.
Okay.
Humans never observed.
Okay.
So
well,
therefore,
your argument's invalidated then.
How can you not see how dumb this is? I don't understand. There's got to be multiple levels of dumb, and this is getting near the top. You believe these charts that all life forms came from a common ancestor, and you're saying because we didn't see it, therefore it must be science.
That's not what I said at all.
What grade are you in, son? Think about it, okay?
The fact that you have to call me stupid just shows how weak your argument is.
No, it's not you. I'm saying your argument is stupid. What you believe is stupid.
No, you call evolutionists and atheists stupid all the time, Ken. And scientists, basically.
Is there a better word like dumb?
You're either lying or you're stupid.
Okay, which word would you like me to use? Stupid or lying or dumb? Which one?
I would like you to tell the truth.
Okay, the truth is dogs produce dogs.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, then it's not. But you believe
produce mean? What do you mean by produce?
Hey, AJ, why don't you let him get his thought out, all right? And then we'll move on to your next argument. And so we'll just limit the
real simple. This isn't a child's textbook. This is from a website a few months ago, Our Planet. This is the stuff they teach at universities, that all life forms came from a single-celled creature. They went to prokaryotes and then eukaryotes and then protozoa and sponges. And this is taught as if it is science. It is not science.
If I may say, it makes a lot more sense that something came from something simple and moved towards complex than something was complex and then it was simple and then it was complex again.
Okay, why does that make sense to you? Do we ever see anything simple? And by the way, a bacteria is not simple. But let's take a bacteria or a protozoa. Do you think going from a protozoa to a human would involve adding a whole lot of information like arms, lizard, tails? Yes, going from a protozoa to a human would involve adding trillions of bits of information. This is never seen. It isn't science. You can believe it all you want, but it's imagination, SpongeBob style. That's all it is. Does a protozoa have lungs or heart or circulatory system or skeletal system or muscular system or nervous system, reproductive system like ours? No. How did all that get added? Oh, just imagine over billions of years. That's why it's not science. That's all.
We have literally observed mutations create new information. It has been observed.
I don't believe that for 1 second. I want to see that new useful information. Give me an example.
Look at nyelinase.
I didn't hear you. Look at what?
Nyelinase. It's a type of enzyme that breaks down nylon.
Right, able to digest nylon. So you're saying that is new information?
Yeah, it is an entirely new family of enzymes that did not exist prior to that mutation.
Right.
And it serves a new function that no other enzyme in the world prior was capable of doing.
And that process is that example you gave is enough to make you believe this chart that you came from
it's enough for me to believe that naturalistic mechanisms like mutation can create new genetic information, which is what I was using it to demonstrate.
Okay.
Yeah, he's moving the goalpost.
And
who's talking? Okay, Amy, you said you can go from simple to complex, and you think that's easy to believe. What examples do you have? Do we see this in nature?
Yes. We
like what?
See the entire evolutionary tree. We can see single cells, then multi-cells. We can see simple animals. We can then see complex animals. And then in the complex animals, we can see both simple conscious beings and introspective conscious beings. I would also say that the prokaryote...
Before you change topics, we see what some people call our simple life forms. We see what some people call our complex life forms. Are you saying because we see those two, therefore there's a relationship between them? How would you know?
We have DNA evidence, we have fossil evidence, we have multiple overlap.
One at a time. DNA evidence could just as easily prove a common designer. There are millions of lines of code in Microsoft PowerPoint that are identical to Microsoft Word, because the same guys are designing them. There's millions of lines of DNA code that are similar to maybe a snail. The same God wrote the code. That would be in a court of law. The fact that you see similarities would not prove your theory is right, nor my theory is right. Both would say, hey, we believe this. I admit mine's a faith. You don't admit yours is a faith. You think it's a science.
Two things easily debunk common design as an explanation versus common ancestry. The first is convergent evolution, where you have two animals that have similar designs, but very different genetics. And then the second is non-constrained, non-functional areas of DNA that still have similarities between species. So obviously there's not a design there, there's not a function there, but they still have similarities. Those two facts debunk common design.
In your mind. Okay, we're going way off topic. Let's get back to, she said simple can change to complex. Show me an example where we've seen this happen. They've been breeding bacteria in the laboratory for, 100 years now. Have they ever seen the bacteria produce a non-bacteria? You can get a new generation every 8 hours. So one scientist in one lifetime can look at thousands of generations.
We also don't expect a higher clad to ever become something else. My question to you, Kent, is do you think there will ever be a time when we're not mammals?
Actually, Kent, before you respond, so hold on to that question. T-Rock, we got a couple more guests. Somebody is coming in very choppy, almost sounding like a mouse. I'm not sure if it's you, T-Rock. Can you say something and give us an audio test? Yeah. Okay. So if you could, I'm not the only one hearing that, right? Okay. So T-Rock, if you could leave the stream, maybe unplug your mic or something, do something to refresh it, come back in. Once you come back in, we'll do another mic test and we'll see if it's improved. Okay. So with that, Amy, could you reiterate your question for Kent? Then we'll hand it back to Kent. We'll allow Amy and Kent to go back and forth on this for a little while.
Sure. The reason that we are saying you'll never be something that you are another higher clad in, you can only evolve into different branches, is because my question would be, Kent, when do you think that you will stop being a mammal?
Well, if you can never change the clade that you're in, then the protozoa is always going to be a protozoa. It changed its clade. Yeah, no, I think humans will always produce humans. I think humans have always produced humans in the past. I think there's no evidence whatsoever that humans came from something non-human. Biologically, all we've ever seen, we see protozoa produce baby protozoa, but you guys think they changed their clade. You claim they can't change their clade, but look at this chart. You got every clade connected. You got the plants, the animals, the bacteria, you got them all connected. They're very different clades. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth here. You believe all these creatures change clade. They do this all the time. They draw a line on paper connecting them, and that's enough to prove it. Just type in family tree. In the modern textbooks at PhD level, they have these trees in here. Not a child's book from years ago. They've been teaching this for a long time, and it's all baloney. There's no evidence of a last universal common ancestor that turned into a bacteria and turned into humans and fish and trees. But they connect them with lines on paper and claim it is science. I believe, to answer your question clearly, mammals always produce the same kind of babies that they are. There are variations, but they're limited. They now have cows that can jump up to 6 feet. They're never going to jump over the moon. There's a limit. Somebody still got a noisy mic there, brother. Yes.
I'd like to ask a question, if that's okay.
I believe humans are mammals and will always produce baby humans. No exceptions. I do not believe humans came from a protozoa. But you do. That's not science.
We'll go back to that, but I know AJ has a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just wondering why you continue to lie about the title of Darwin's book, because when he says favored races in the title of the book, he's not talking about white or black people. He's talking about animals, and he's talking about different varieties of animals. Like humans are almost never mentioned in Origin of Species. So I'm just wondering why you continue to lie about this.
Okay, why do you call me a liar so freely?
Because you lie.
Okay, here's his book right here. Here's another copy of it. The Origin of Species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. You're thinking, who's making all the noise on the mic?
See, Brown, I'm going to have to mute you because you have a lot of background noise. So here we go.
So it does teach favored races. This is exactly what Hitler used to eliminate human races that he thought were inferior.
That's not how Darwin meant. That's not what he meant when he says favored races. And if you read the book, you would know that that's not how he's using the word. You're misrepresenting the title.
Different types of animals would be superior to others.
No, not superior, just different varieties.
Does Darwin teach in his book that some variety evolves a little better than the rest, and that one has to take over the population?
No, because evolution is not strictly about getting better. It's just about change. And you have trade-offs where sometimes you have something that's beneficial in one environment, but the environment changes and it's no longer beneficial. It's not only about getting better.
Do the textbooks teach that all the forms of life came from a common ancestor?
I don't want to talk about the textbooks. I want you to acknowledge the fact that you're lying about the title of this book. You're misrepresenting what he means by favored races to make him look racist and do a guilt by association in violation of Godwin's law to say evolution is bad because it led to Hitler. And that's wrong. And it's actually pretty immoral.
Godwin's law.
That.
Okay, let's do one at a time. Kent, go ahead.
I'm done. All
right. Evolution teaching did lead to Adolf Hitler. It led to Joseph Stalin. It's the foundation philosophy behind communism and socialism and Nazism today. It still is. Darwin's theory was used to justify killing the Jews, to killing the blacks. Hitler hated black people. He thought they were an inferior race. We still today call it in America the race wars. Yes, I think there's one race called the human race. Okay, some are darker skinned than others. I've never met a black man. I've never met a white man. I've seen lighter skin and darker skin. But no, Darwin's book says clearly, I'm just reading the title, and you want to say the word races doesn't mean a human race. Okay, you can believe that if you wish, and maybe you're correct. But the point is, this is what Hitler used to justify his racism.
I am correct. And just because, even if that's true, it doesn't make evolution wrong. Just because it has a bad outcome, which I don't agree with, but even if it has a bad outcome, doesn't mean it's not true. You're changing the topic again, but that's okay. That's typical of you. Yes, you are.
go back to an earlier topic because we've agreed that humans are mammals, and can we also agree that squirrels are mammals?
I agree. I believe squirrels will always produce baby squirrels and are not related to humans. They don't care that we classify them as mammals. Man has decided to classify these animals in different categories. They don't care how we classify them. When squirrels are looking for a mate, they look for another squirrel all the time, every time. We got a bunch running around in the woods here.
But why call it a mammal?
Yeah, the question was just whether or not you agree that they're mammals.
Somebody made up the idea, hey, all the animals that have hair and bear live young and have body temperature, regulate body temperature, let's call them a mammal. The squirrel doesn't care what we call them. So that's a modern classification system made up by Carolus Linnaeus and modified a million times by others. So the fact that humans are mammals and squirrels are mammals, it's totally irrelevant.
No, Ken, it's not just arbitrary, though, because all mammals are genetically similar, more similar to every other mammal than they are to any other creature that is not a mammal. It is not just arbitrary. The genetics bear out why they're all classified together.
Can I get a mic check real quick?
Yes, T-Rock, you're coming in good now. So
okay,
you no longer sound like Mickey Mouse. You're ready to brawl, brother.
Okay, good deal. Maybe Mighty Mouse. Okay, question for Grayson. If the system you see in the biological world were designed, what would you expect it to look like?
Is this really pertinent? I mean, this is a Q&A for Kent, first of all, but if you guys want me to answer that question, I can, but I don't really see how it's pertinent to tonight's.
Yeah, go ahead, Grayson. If you'd like to answer it, go ahead.
And then afterwards, I could answer it.
Yeah, okay. So if things were actually designed, then we would expect them to look like things that humans design. So for instance, like you have like various hybrid types of vehicles, right? We have aquatic vehicles, we have flying vehicles, we have driving vehicles, and we have hybrids between all of these different classifications. But in the fossil record, whenever we see like fossils that have mosaic properties of different animals, it's always for animals that are closely genetically related. We don't see hybrids between things that are not closely genetically related in an evolutionary sense. So if things were designed, I would expect to see mosaic fossils and hybrid creatures that would have qualities that are intermediate between two groups that evolution would say are not closely related. So the fact that we exclusively see the evolutionary predictions and we never see like any hybrids that are like for things that evolution would not predict, we would find is pretty strong evidence. But if we did see those would be evidence for design.
So let me ask you this follow-up question real quick. Can you not see a functional reason why genetics should be similar between people and animals and plants and so forth? Can you not see a functional reason?
No, absolutely not, because not all of the genome has function, as we would say. Like, not all of it is even constrained for its sequence. So if there's no constraints about why the genetic sequence at certain parts would even be that sequence, and yet we do see similarities that are not tied to any function, then like the genetic similarities are pretty strong evidence of common ancestry and not common design.
Yeah, hold on. So the reason why that answer is just wrong. I mean, my Apple iPhone looks very similar to an Android. And there's no similarity there. They're actually incompatible by themselves. So humans do design things that look similar, but either way, that would be a non sequitur. It doesn't follow that because you have an opinion on what a design should look like, that God had to design that way. That doesn't follow at all.
Your example was a non sequitur. I agree.
Yeah.
And if I could just give some examples of what a designed universe should look like, my first guess would be more life, because as many physicists have pointed out, our universe seems designed for black holes. It does not seem very habitable. Everything is either freezing or on fire. There's only a certain amount of planets within the circumstellar habitable zones that they habit around their suns.
Radiation.
Exactly. We also, just off the top of my head, 90-degree angles tend to be a hallmark of design, and we also tend to have a method of communication. So, for example, within most programming languages, you are able to have a comment section. You're able to just comment so that you can go back into your code. We do not see that with genetics. We see a chemical compounds interacting. We do not see God saying, hey, maybe you should make an arb here at, oh, wow, I really messed up like that whole breathing thing where you have to do that with eating at the same time. And so these would be methods of an actual designed universe.
Wait, so Grayson, do you agree with that, Grayson? That the genetic code isn't a code that is applicable to multiple life forms?
I don't even know what you mean by that. I don't know how you got that from what
It's a leading question.
Well, let me get in real quick. I'm trying to keep my own time kind of limited here, but I'll try and be quick. The reason both of your arguments are absolutely absurd is because you can't predict what somebody else will design. You're literally trying to put your own human limitations on what somebody else might design. That's absolutely absurd.
90-degree corners? That is absolutely insane. How could you ever do that?
That's completely irrelevant.
You asked me
I've given you guys plenty of mic time. You can wait
if it was designed. That was what you
You
asked.
guys, you got it. We're gonna let T-Rock finish his thought.
I've been as quiet as I can, so I'm gonna just take a couple seconds and I'll yield the time. But it's absurd because in random unguided processes, they're very limited in what they can produce. They cannot write a book. They cannot make a wheel. They can't build a car. They can't build a cell phone. They can't even write a single word. Unguided processes cannot do those things. Only intelligence can do those. Now, conversely, intelligent input can produce randomness at will. So there's a huge deficit in what randomness can do. And you're basically arguing that design cannot do this and cannot do that. But design can do everything randomness can do, plus an infinite amount more that randomness cannot do.
Well, we've seen molecular machines that have analogs to wheels in our own bodies.
And also natural selection is a guided process. It's not unguided.
It's
so your whole premise is
deterministic.
flawed.
It's not by chance.
Yeah,
Not
we've
by
also seen
chance.
abstract art.
It's not.
I'm sorry, but you're going to turn into a semantic argument that's completely nonsensical when you say, okay, it's a guided process that a meteor slammed into the earth and wiped out the dinosaurs. That's
not
random.
natural selection now, is it? I mean, the natural selection comes from like how the environment shapes the fitness and reproduction of organisms.
And you don't think a meteor slamming into the earth doesn't affect the environment?
And that's not random either.
It wasn't.
It's a guided process.
Okay, let's get Kent's thoughts on some of this back and forth here. Natural selection, evidence for design. Kent, we'll hand it back to you, brother.
Well, we have about 40 topics going at the same time here. I thought they were supposed to provide evidence for evolution. I said we've never seen any plant or animal produce babies other than their kind. And they say, well, if you go back in time and in the fossil record, first place, there's no fossil record. There's a lot of fossils, and you can't go back in time. And you couldn't prove those fossils you dug out of the dirt had any kids or are related to anything alive today. And Amy, come to Alabama. We have trees that grow perpendicular to the earth at a right angle. Lots of them. Come on down. Okay. So I think we should get back to where is the evidence for evolution?
What would you accept as evidence?
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide some evidence.
Okay.
Okay, and I think I just wanted to jump in real quick. We do have Dr. Dan. He wants to join. The room was full with 10 people. One spot just opened up. And so where is the evidence for evolution? So Dan from Creation Myths. Actually, James W. is rejoining. Okay, so real quick. The panel is at 10. Dr. Dan wants to join for 15 minutes and go back and forth with Kent with no interrupting. Is there somebody? I'll
jump out.
Whoever, and AJ, if you jump out, we'll bring Dan in. Once Dan leaves in 15 minutes, you can come back in.
Okay,
and we'll do that.
I'll do the same afterwards if you need them. The cycle.
Okay, cool. So whenever Dr. Dan joins, we'll allow him and Kent to go back and forth one topic at a time. Where's the evidence for evolution for about 15, 20 minutes. And then we'll go back and forth with somebody else. So until Dan joins, I think it was Amy.
Well, I can just preview what I was going to say. Oh, there we go.
Okay, Dan, the man with the plan, is here. And so let's
everybody
hand it to Dan and Kent. Dan, thanks for being here. Dan, a brief introduction from yourself for anybody who might not be familiar with you. And then the topic is where or what is the evidence for evolution. We'll allow you and Kent to go back and forth a little bit on it. So Dan, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm Dr. Dan. I'm an evolutionary biologist. My channel is Creation Myths, where I talk about the silliness that is creation science. That's what I do. So in a lot of detail, I will say. There's numbers. We do math. It's fun. So here's what I'd like to hear from Kent. The topic is best evidence for evolution. In order, that's this broad. That's not great. So let's narrow it down. So, Kent, what mechanisms of evolution can't work or don't work? Let's start there, because you say evolution can't happen. So what mechanisms of evolution can't do whatever it is evolution has to do?
Well, the word evolution is a really a slippery word. Do you
biological?
Say that again.
Biological evolution.
Okay. Biological evolution, if by that you mean animals can change varieties, so we now have 4,000 varieties of potato. That's evolution. They all came from a common potato. Do you believe potatoes are related to elephants? Is that what you mean by evolution?
Well, hang on, that was a question. I'm happy to answer it. We know your script. I've heard it a million times. So what I'm asking is what mechanisms of evolution don't work? So yes, a potato and an elephant are related by a common ancestor.
Oh, okay.
There are mechanisms to get from that common ancestor to those different things. Which of those mechanisms of evolution don't work?
All we ever observe are variations within a pre-existing code.
That's the script.
To get 4,000 kinds of potatoes. You just said potatoes and elephants are related. I would assume you're related to a potato and an elephant also in your thinking. What mechanism would do this? That's why I say, what do you mean by evolution?
Okay.
Levels. Dan, you said
no, we're not going to do the 6 levels thing.
Dan, we're not
going
to do Hey, excuse me, Dan. I'm just going to make a point of moderation. We're not going to be over talking, Dan.
Sam, here's the thing, though.
So when you ask a question, you're going to have to give him time to respond to the question, and you can behave just like you would require one of your students to behave. You just wait until the teacher's done, and then you'll have plenty of time to talk. You know how this goes. It's simple.
I do, Sam. If I may, yes. If I may, I'm a little time limited, and I know Kent's 6 levels of evolution script. What I'm asking about,
if you want to come back when you have more time, so you don't have to be rude and let him finish talking, then maybe that would work. Maybe that would work better.
Well, look, maybe I can clarify my question to Kent so that we can skip the stellar evolution and the this and the that. Can I clarify my question so we could focus on the relevant topic?
You can ask.
Would that be all right with you?
Questions. That's
fair.
Okay.
So here's my question, Kent. Let's start here. Let's start narrow biological evolution. What are the basic mechanisms of biological evolution? Let's start there.
Well, you'd have to answer that question since you're the one who believes in
it.
No,
I'm asking you because you say it can't happen.
I think we've never observed any animal produce what anyone with half a brain cell would call a different kind of animal. We don't observe this. You can imagine it all you want.
Sure.
So what mechanisms? Give me the list of mechanisms that you think work for your religion, and I'll be glad to dismantle.
Here's the thing, Kent. I don't think you know the mechanisms of evolution, so I'm asking you. I think you're talking about something that you don't know anything about. So I would love to provide evidence for this, but I don't think you know what the topic is actually about. So in my class, when I teach intro evolution, there are 5 basic mechanisms of evolution. Do you think you can name them?
Dan, instead of a mini quiz, can you just provide your evidence for evolution?
Yes, I'm getting there, but it's based on these mechanisms. And if he doesn't know the mechanisms, then what I'm saying won't matter.
All right. Okay. Well, the time's short, so.
Tell you what, mutations is one of them.
There's one. Yeah, one.
Okay. And you think
I bet you need 2.
Would you please shut up when I'm talking? Okay. Okay. You think mutations are going to cause a creature to change to something else? Almost 99.999% of the mutations we've observed are harmful, fatal, or useless. You think an amoeba is going to turn to a whale by mutations. That's one of the many mechanisms you use. I point out.
What are the other 4?
You're going to interrupt. You're interrupting again. Gee whiz. You do this. If your student did this, you'd fail them and kick them out of class, okay? Why don't you call Donnie? Let's schedule a debate, you and me, Dan. I challenge you. And you bring the mechanisms that you think were going to cause evolution. One by one, we'll dismantle them, equal time. And Donnie, you shut off his mic when it's my turn to talk. Fair enough? Donnie, call standing for truth. Dan, one at a time. You think mutations are going to cause evolution. I point out all the mutations we've observed are harmful, fatal, or neutral. You would have to have trillions of beneficial mutations that add information. That amoeba on your chart is going to have to add arm and legs and hair and lungs and skeletal system. That's not science. To say we all came from a common ancestor like a protozoa, but through the mechanism of mutations, it's not going to add any information. So that mechanism is useless. Okay. That's like saying smashing cars into a tree is going to turn them into an airplane. So go ahead. What's your next mechanism?
Ahead, yep. Okay. So you got one mechanism evolution. What are the other 4? I bet you could. I bet there's one that everybody can get because Darwin came up with it. I bet everyone knows that one, right?
Okay.
Well, Dan, why don't you? Okay, Kent, go ahead.
Yeah, Kent, go ahead. What's the other 4? What are the other 4? If you knew them, you would have already said them.
Praise I am. I'll only continue if you will shut off his mic. Will you do that, please? Shut him off.
Absolutely.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Let's make sure Kent has a full
another mechanism that you claim causes your evolution is natural selection. Nature has to select the strongest to survive. The weaker have to die off in order for this to work because natural selection is only going to select. It doesn't create anything. Mutations don't create any information that's new. Natural selection doesn't create any information that's new. You're dreaming to think that that's going to turn a protozoa to a whale and a human. And you're dreaming that you are related to a potato. I'm sorry to hear about that. I ate one of your relatives today for lunch. I'm so sorry, okay? Had I known, I would have, never mind, I would have eaten it anyway. Okay, so yes, the mechanisms that you claim cause evolution do not cause any evolution. They cause chaos. We now have 400 breeds of cows that have been from artificial selection. Artificial selection is where man decides, hey, I think I'm going to make this one give more milk or more beef or stand the heat better. But all the variations we've been able to produce through natural selection or through artificial selection have been keeping it within what everybody would call the same kind. The cows are still producing cows. Most of them wouldn't survive in nature. So you don't have a mechanism for your religion. You believe it happened by faith, but there's no science behind it. Where the purpose of this debate, Dan, is where is the evidence? This is not a quiz whether I know the 5 things you teach in your class. Where is the evidence you claim you're related to a potato? Where is the evidence for this? DNA similarity? That's just as much evidence for a common designer. That's not proof of common ancestry. You can believe that. And you've chosen to limit yourself to looking at that only. But it's just as much evidence of a common designer.
I just want to say boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Right over to you, Dr. Dan.
Okay, so Dan, equal time. Feel free. Go ahead.
So everybody, if Kent knew the 5 basic mechanisms of evolution that you learn in an intro bio class, he would have said it right there. So he doesn't know the basic mechanisms. Okay, I want to make that clear for everybody. So you've said a couple times tonight, you think everything evolved from an amoeba or a protozoa, and you came.
Oh, Kent, let's just make sure, Dan. Kent, if you want to note what he said because you want to respond to something there, note it down, and then we'll give you equal time after Dan's finished responding. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, so you'll notice, everybody, that he didn't answer the question. He can't answer the question because he doesn't understand the thing he's criticizing. He just goes right into his spiel that he's practiced over decades in filibusters. Does everyone see how that works? Just completely ignore whatever is said and go right to the script that he uses every time. Part of that script is to say that evolutionists think everyone came from an amoeba. Everybody came from a protozoa. I can give you the evidence that that's the case, but first I need to know what you think that means. What do you mean when you say amoeba?
Okay, Dan, thank you. Kent, go ahead, uninterrupted.
Okay, you said, I don't know the things that you teach in your class, the 5 basic mechanisms. Do you know the names of the books in order? Do you know who Moses' grandfather was? I could give you 1,000 Bible questions. I bet you don't know either. Okay, come on now. Let's get this back to reality here. The fact is, we don't see any animal produce anything. I point out the books teach we all had a common ancestor, which was a single-celled, primitive, unicellular organism. Here's a 2021 biology textbook showing, 2021, showing, let's see, elephants and rabbits and monkeys all going back to a common ancestor. This is propaganda. This isn't science. They drew lines on paper, and that's all it is. So it's just not science. My objection is you guys want all of us to pay for your religion. Go start a private school and teach your religion to those who wish to come learn it. And the fact that I don't know what you teach in your class, send me the 5 mechanisms and I'll debunk them one by one. Okay? Dan, get him on. Dan, Donnie, schedule a debate on your channel. I'll look up the 5 mechanisms that he teaches in his class, and one by one I'll debunk them. None of them are going to add the information to turn a protozoa. Watch this right here. Protozoa turn to a fish, a reptile, a frog, a starfish, a human, a spider. This is the stuff the kids are being taught. I object to that.
If I may,
that's not science. Go ahead.
The question was, what do you mean by protozoa? That was the question. This isn't about the Bible. Whoa, this isn't about the Bible. This isn't about what I know about the Bible. You bill yourself as Dr. Dino, an expert on evolution. I think it's reasonable that people should expect you know what you're talking about. Right?
I do.
The kind of stuff that gets taught in intro bio about evolutionary theory. The second thing I asked is, what do you mean by protozoa? You don't even need to give me a right answer. You just need to say what you mean when you say that word. And you went on this big riff about how I don't know anything about the Bible. And what does it matter anyway? If you don't, if you, Kent, don't know anything about evolution. All I asked was, what do you mean by this word you say all the time? Okay, what do you mean when you say protozoa? What does that word mean to you?
I've said many times, a protozoa or some single-celled creature, there are 20,000 now varieties of single-celled creatures. This textbook says all the many forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor found in a population of primitive unicellular organisms. So when I say protozoa, I say it as an example because the books show a protozoa in this case, and they label it protozoa. Some people label it bacteria. Some people label it single-celled organism. Do you believe all the life forms came from a single-celled organism of any kind, whether protozoa, bacteria, or anything?
Okay, first of all, so no, you don't know what protozoa are because protozoa are not bacteria. Those are different things.
I didn't
say
they were.
Do you know the difference? You just said protozoa and bacteria.
They came from is protozoa single-celled?
Yeah, but it's not bacteria.
Okay. I said they came from a single-celled organism. That's what they teach. Protozoa is just an example.
Okay, it's just an example.
Cellular organisms. Protozoa, some books say bacteria. I've said this many times. Why are you straining at a gnat and swallowing a camel? You believe you came from a single-celled creature, don't you?
I still don't have an answer to what you mean by the word protozoa. All I'm asking you is to define that word.
A protozoa
okay,
is
let's try. Okay. I can't stay. I got another few minutes here because I do have other things. I do have obligations.
Yay.
I can't stay for too much longer, so I do apologize.
Well, Dan, he did say by protozoa, single-celled creature, and then he asked if you believe you ultimately came from a single-celled creature. Did you want to answer Kent's question?
Yeah, I'd love to answer Ken's question. The answer is yes. All extant life evolved from unicellular organisms, originally prokaryotic and then more recently eukaryotic. Does Kent know what those two words mean, prokaryotic and eukaryotic? Because if you're going to say there's no evidence for evolution, and I explain the genetic similarities between prokaryotes and eukaryotes, and then the more derived eukaryotes. If Kent doesn't know what those words mean, can I say one thing? Wait, hang on, C. Brown.
Actually, C. Brown, just 1 second. So Dan was asking Kent about eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Kent, did you want to respond to that?
Okay. Whoa, hang on. I was almost done when C. Brown interrupted there. So if, I can go through the evidence for prokaryotes and eukaryotes and endosymbiosis and the more derived eukaryotes and the different lineages. We could talk about that evidence. But if the words prokaryote and eukaryote and endosymbiosis don't mean anything to Kent, then that's going to be a useless discussion. So I need to know that we're on the same page with the definition. So Kent, when I say the word prokaryote, what does that mean to you?
Some cells have a nucleus that's bound up in a membrane. Some cells do not. Man has decided to stick these labels on there. And I don't think the cells care. The cells do not care what we call them, okay? But the textbooks do say we came from a single-celled creature, and you yourself admitted You're related to a potato and you came from a single-celled creature. This is never observed. All the single-celled creatures we've ever observed in the laboratory, when they make babies, produce the same kind. Whether it's a bacteria or a protozoa, or it's always the same kind. They've been watching these produce babies for a long time. This textbook tells the kids the protozoa in this case, and they write it out on the book, P-R-O-T. It's spelled out there for you. That's the only reason I say it, because that's what it says on this book. Some books say bacteria. In those cases, I say, well, they teach you came from a bacteria. You yourself said you believe a single-celled creature of some kind, and a protozoa is one of the 20,000 kinds of single-celled creatures that are alive, okay? So that's what they're teaching. I object to that. We don't see any protozoa or bacteria produce anything other than their kind. Do you have evidence of a protozoa turning into anything other than a protozoa, or producing babies that are other than a protozoa? You can make them in the laboratory in a hurry. Can you make them turn to something else?
You sort of turned into a piece of shit, Kent, so there's a good argument.
Okay, well, Ronaldo, hey, keep it respectful. You've broken the rules in your first 3 words. No swearing. Okay, let's keep it as cordial as possible. So he's out. Dan, go ahead. Equal time.
So great. You got prokaryote. You know what prokaryote means, and I'll just give you eukaryote. I'm assuming you know that one too. Awesome. So one of the main things to get from prokaryotes to eukaryotes involves a process called horizontal gene transfer and recombination. We all know what recombination is, how that works. It happens even when humans reproduce, right? When mom and dad and the genetic recombination happens. Good. We're all on the same page with recombination. Kent, I have heard you describe that process in the most bananas terms I've ever heard in my life, where you say that the DNA from mom unzips and the DNA from dad unzips, and then the half strand from mom and the half strand from dad zip up together. Is that your understanding of how recombination works?
That is how it works with half the DNA code. The
DNA works.
The DNA code divides on the middle.
Dan, please let's allow Kent to respond. If you disagree with his explanation,
I'm good, y'all. I'm good. Okay. I'm good, y'all. Have a good night. I'm good. I'll listen to Kent give an answer to that, but I am good. Peace and love, everybody.
Bye, Dr. Dan.
You running, Dan?
I'll stay out of respect. I'll stay while Kent answers, and then I'm going to peace out.
Bye, Dan. Bye, Dan.
Oh, wow.
And subscribe to Creation Myths while he listens.
Okay. Bye, Dan.
Feel free to respond.
Okay. Yes. You get half of the DNA. The DNA splits down the middle. You get half the latter from your mom, half from your dad. They have to zip back together in a very complex method. And it's amazing that it works at all, and it works really good. There's CATG, the 4 different parts of the gene across there, and they combine together and make all the traits that you have. And you get half the traits from mom and half from dad. And any biology teacher should know that. You get half the DNA code from your parents, each parent. That's how it works. I don't understand what... I don't understand.
Okay, Dan, before you leave...
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye. Dan, call Donnie, schedule a debate, pick the topic. I want you to supply ahead of time which one you want to talk about. What's the best evidence for evolution?
The letters in the mail. Okay, see you later.
And you realize that...
Well, Dan, I just want to jump in. The title of tonight's show is Where is or What is the Evidence for Evolution? Recombination allowing large sections of DNA basically to move from one chromosome to another in this genetic shuffling process every generation. Okay, whether Dan disagrees with some of the minor details with Kent, how is that providing evidence for evolution? Let's stick on topic. Dan was here for 20 minutes, and correct me if I'm wrong, all I saw was an evolutionist quiz. Where's the evidence for evolution? Dan certainly didn't provide any. And so anybody on the panel currently, whoever wants to go back and forth with Kent, where is the evidence for evolution? Because
You're
Dan
protecting Kent there because he said
no, I'm not protecting Kent because anybody can go back and listen to the last 20 minutes. It was nothing but an evolutionist quiz.
No, we heard you.
Grayson, I'm the host. On the mechanisms of evolution, natural selection, genetic drift, recombination, mutation. Okay. How is that providing evidence for evolution? What's the definition of prokaryote, eukaryote? How is that evidence for evolution? What's the definition of recombination? So if anybody now would like to go back and forth with Kent, what is the evidence for evolution? Evolutionist quizzes aren't going to answer that question. So go ahead. Who'd like to go back and forth now?
Well, AJ, I'd like to go.
Okay. So AJ would like to go. AJ, go ahead.
Yeah. So right before Dan came in, Kent asked the same question that you're asking, Donnie. And my question in response to Kent's question is, what would you actually accept as evidence? Like, what would count?
That's a way to avoid the question. You going to school to be a lawyer, to learn how to talk out of both sides of your mouth? Where's the evidence? Whether I accept it or not, isn't it?
What if he was?
You provide what you think is evidence, and then we'll talk about it. Don't ask me what I would accept as evidence. Provide. What do you have for evidence?
Well, you can't answer that question. Because the answer is nothing. The answer is nothing. You will never accept anything as evidence.
If you can show me evidence for evolution, I'll believe it. So far, these charts show everything coming from a common ancestor, which was single-celled.
Okay, so what would be an example of evolution happening that I could show you? If I could show it to you, what would it be an example?
Would you agree that every farmer in the planet that crossbreeds cows, we'll take cows as an example, gets a baby cow, a calf? Is there any evidence of the cow slowly turning into anything else?
You're saying that an example of evolution would be the baby cow turning into something else? Is that what you're saying?
Does this textbook show the birds are related to the frogs? They drew lines on paper between the bird and the frog and the sea squirt and the starfish and the sponges.
Where is it that when I ask you a question, you just ignore it?
You don't want an answer to any of this, AJ.
Yes,
I know
I
that.
do. You can't answer that.
You don't. Listen, the textbooks are showing these animals are related. Where is the evidence that would somehow they had an amoeba, a protozoa, turn into a frog? That's what they're showing.
Well, what would the evidence that you would accept of that relationship, Kent? Like, what would you accept as evidence?
I would accept scientific evidence, something we can observe and study and test. Take a protozoa in the laboratory, slowly turn it to a frog. I would like to see that.
That's not what evolution
sounds like a science fiction movie.
Hold on a second. So you're saying the only thing that would prove it to you, because you offered $250,000 for proof, evidence of evolution. So the way, if I could win that money, the only way would be for me to have a protozoa or like a single-celled organism in a lab and to make it change within like your lifetime into a frog. That would count.
So now you're calling on your magic god of time. Billions of years.
I said within your lifetime.
Okay. Now still, my lifetime's limited. Okay, so is yours. So do you think the protozoa over millions of years?
No. Can you answer my question? Can you answer my question?
It's your question's getting fuzzy here. So what evidence would I accept? I told you, I believe in science, things we can observe and study. And nobody on the planet.
I'm not trying to interrupt you. I wanted. You said that I would have to turn in the lab, make a protozoa change into a frog. So are you saying that the only thing, or an example of something that would count as evidence of evolution, would be if I could, in front of you, have a protozoa change into a frog?
That would be one method, or turn into a bird or a reptile or a spider.
That is not what evolution describes. That is a ridiculous straw man, and it just shows that either you're intentionally saying the only thing that would prove it to me is something that I already know you could never do, or you don't know what evolution is.
I know what the kids are being taught. I can show you in this book from last year, our 2021 version of the biology from Campbell, one of the major publishers. They show the elephant having a common ancestor with the frog.
I wasn't taught evolution when I was in high school. It wasn't in the curriculum.
Okay, can I ask you, if you claim that you are the father of your son, right? And what evidence could you show that would support that? And if I asked you what evidence you would accept to show that you're the father of your son, and you said, well, let me make another one. For evidence that I'm the father, I would have to be able to replicate that and make another identical son in order for that. That's the evidence that I would accept. That's basically what you're doing here. We can just look at the genetics to prove that you're the father of your son, just like we can look at the genetics to prove evolution and universal common ancestry.
Oh, no, you're stretching it way too far. I think, could we do genetic tests and prove that you are not the father of my son?
Yeah.
Well, I think we could do genetics and prove you are not related to a potato either. The fact
well,
that
you'd be wrong about that.
Would you believe you have some genetic similarities to my son? Would you have the chromosomes in your body to make hair and nose and mouth and ears?
Yes, we are the same species.
So, but you're not the father, are you?
No.
Okay. So I think that we can find the fact you guys are looking at evidence of animals having similar DNA code and concluding they're related. But you're not related to my son. But I am. And he's related to his son. And I think if we go back, my dad was a human and my grandpa was a human. I think we go back, it's going to be humans all the way back. And going forward, it's going to be humans all the way forward. But this textbook shows if you go back far enough, you get to a protozoa. That's not science. That's all. They got a human on the top here. Mammals, I agree. Humans produce humans. Always. They're having them all the time, all over the world. Has anybody ever seen a human produce a non-human or come from a non-human? Have we ever seen that?
Well, you're the one that always claims that these categories are arbitrary human designations. You say, oh, well, the fish doesn't care, the squirrel doesn't care that we call it a squirrel. But now, all of a sudden, these categorizations, now they're important. Now a squirrel only gives birth to more squirrels. Now humans only give birth to humans, only come from humans. Now, all of a sudden, you have to rest on these categorizations that you want to dismiss so readily in other contexts. It's hypocritical.
No, I'm not dismissing the categories. I'm pointing out we never see a category change to a different category. Call it a clade.
Well,
if you want.
we do, because chihuahuas came from non-chihuahuas, and you admit that. So that is a categorical change.
You think a chihuahua is no longer a dog?
No, that's the point of monophily, which you deny.
It'll always be the higher clad. That's the point. There may be a time where dogs actually have separate branches, and so they speciate, and the species can no longer. But they will always be a dog. They will always be carnivora. They will always be a mammal. They will always be multicellular, and they'll always be alive.
Good.
All right, let's go one at a time. I appreciate those comments, Amy. Kent, go ahead. Feel free to respond to Amy.
Wonderful, Amy. Look at this chart, and this is typical. They show a single-celled creature by whatever name you want to call it, protozoa, bacteria, whatever.
I like it.
They show it. I think the protozoa, the single-celled creatures, are always going to be single-celled creatures. They're always going to be the same kind. That's what we observe in the laboratory. When you raise bacteria, you get a new generation every 8 hours, and they've always come up to be bacteria. But you believe bacteria or some single-celled creature like this slowly became everything on this chart. That's why it's not science. No, we don't see this.
That's why it is science.
Amy, you said they stay in their same clade. Why didn't the protozoa stay in his clade?
Because the single-celled organisms, a good amount of them do just fine down there. They didn't need to work with mitochondria to become something bigger. In fact, there are numerous single-celled organisms which take down multi-celled organisms all the time.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Say that slowly. There are numerous single-celled organisms that change to multi-cell. And something I'm not talking about a sperm I'm not talking about a sperm and an egg. Obviously, it's designed in their code to do exactly that, okay, to combine.
That doesn't count then.
Well, it's designed in their code to do that.
No, it's not.
Take the sperm by itself, put it in a jar, let's make something else out of it.
That's a ridiculous thing to say.
I agree.
Just because I can't do that doesn't disprove science. You know, that's a ridiculous thing that you do. You say you can't compress the Earth into a ball. That doesn't disprove the fact that like the Big Bang happened. You know, not to change the topic, but I'm just giving an example of what you do. You make these ridiculous examples.
It does disprove it. You believe the whole universe, all the stars fit in a dot smaller than a period on a page, don't you?
Different topic.
Oh, what have I done? I shouldn't have said that. But no, I don't believe that, Ken. Stop telling me what I believe. It's rude.
Okay. You do believe the Big Bang theory.
Stop telling me what I believe, Ken.
Hey, this is about evolution, okay? Donnie wanted to keep this on topic, Kent. We don't want to change the topic. So if it's all right with Donnie, I would like to bring the point of evidence that I wanted to bring tonight for evolution, if that's all right.
Okay, let's allow Kent and Grayson to go back and forth now. Let's keep it cordial, uninterrupted, and one topic at a time. So, Grayson, where is or what is the best evidence for evolution? Go ahead, present.
Okay, so Kent, I think we should be able to agree that a testable, verified prediction should count as evidence, right?
A tested, verified.
Yes would be nice.
Well, I don't know that I understand that completely yet. Give me some more examples of that. A tested, verified.
Yeah, like if we have a model and it makes a falsifiable, testable prediction that we then verify with the empirical data, that would count as evidence. I think the vast majority of people can agree with that.
Well, so if I see a tree limb fall off a tree, Therefore, that proves the tree branch fell on this car over here and destroyed it. That'd be a stretch. I'd like to see that clarified a little more, Your Honor.
I have no idea what you're talking about in that example.
I agree.
Like, here's what we can say. If we see the tree branch on the ground, right, I would make the prediction, hey, it would have come from up high and it came from this tree next to it. And then I look up and I see, hey, look, there's a branch that's broken off of that tree. That would count as a prediction that I made that was then verified with observations, right? That would count as evidence that my theory that the branch came from that tree would be correct, right? That would count as evidence. Yes, please tell me we can agree with that.
Or somebody could have brought the branch in and dropped it there. It's
not saying that this is 100% proof. It's saying that counts as evidence, right?
Right.
It's just evidence. It's not saying it's 100% proven like in mathematics.
Okay, in every court of law, the prosecution gathers evidence to find their case, and the opposition gathers evidence for their case, and they both get a folder full of evidence. Is the guy guilty? Is he not guilty? This happens in every court of law every day, okay? Yes,
okay.
You guys are trying
Ken, I really thought that...
Well, Grayson, let's just allow Ken to finish his thought. Grayson, if you could. Okay, Ken, go ahead. Finish your thoughts, and then Grayson, whatever you'd like to respond to, you'll get uninterrupted time. No worries.
You guys are trying desperately to gather evidence for your case. I think the evidence is for my case. We're both going to stand before the judge one day and he'll decide. So I think the evidence is overwhelming. Animals do not change to anything else. We don't observe this. We don't observe protozoa change.
I haven't even gotten to get to my evidence yet because I really thought that we would be able to easily agree on what would count as evidence. A verified, testable prediction should be able to count to anybody. Anyone should be able to agree that should count as evidence. So now I will say that evolution predicted several of these. Like chromosome 2 came up last time. I won't go into that because we discussed it in the last open mic. I'll talk about a different testable prediction that has been verified, and that is one of missing links, right? It was predicted since Darwin that we should find missing links between like non-human apes and humans, or between fish and tetrapods. And we have found those links. Specifically, I wanted to ask you about Australopithecus, or like early Homo erectus, anywhere between like Homo habilis, anywhere between where we can see the transition happen. We see that, and we never find any modern humans below where we find Australopithecus. Like, there you go. That should count as a verified prediction of evolution. We predicted that we would find non-human apes that are more similar to humans than to chimpanzees, and that's exactly what we found with Australopithecus.
Okay. We find fossils in the dirt. You don't know Australopithecus had any children whatsoever. You don't know it's related to anything today. Are there animals that are found that are new species that are discovered? Like, for instance, take a flying squirrel, okay? They appear to be able to glide through the air. Does that evidence that they're changing to a bird? Or are they designed to be a flying squirrel? Maybe Australopithecus was always designed to be an Australopithecus and it went extinct. You don't know it changed to something today. No human today produces other than humans. No ape today produces other than apes. No orangutans, bonobos, all the ape-like creatures, they simply don't do this. So if you wish to imagine that it happened and that you find a link between them because you think this was what it should look like, that's not, here you go. You are a primate. This author probably is one, okay? But gorillas are still making babies, and they're always gorillas, every time. Gibbons are making gibbons, and they're all, if I found something that looked to me like half gorilla, half gibbon, that wouldn't prove there's any relationship. Maybe there's 20 types of creatures that are extinct on here. So that's not evidence for your theory. You can put it in your folder for evidence, and I would rebut it and say, Your Honor, that's not evidence. Maybe you found something that went extinct. You don't know that they're related. You don't know they had any children.
Right. So nothing that you brought up there was relevant because it doesn't matter whether or not these Australopithecus fossils had any children. It doesn't matter if they were directly related. Really, none of that matters. The fact that they exist and we find the fossils that exist that were exactly what was predicted by evolution we would find. Like, the fact is, it was a verified prediction. Evolution said we should find a creature, like the skeleton of a creature, that was intermediate between humans and chimpanzee, like non-human apes. And that's what we found. It can have no children. It could not have been related to anything. None of that matters to the fact that it exists and we found its skeleton.
Okay, let me answer this, Your Honor. I predict, based on what the Bible teaches, that there was a flood years ago, that wiped out all kinds of creatures, and some might have gone extinct. I predict if we keep digging in the fossils, digging up the fossils out of the ground, we will find some creatures that no longer exist today. That's evidence for a flood. Evidence
you can't predict something that happened in the past.
That's what he's doing. Listen to him.
No.
The prediction was made before the evidence was found.
We predicted where we would find these fossils.
I predict we will find evidence for a flood all over the world, and we'll find evidence of animals that have gone extinct, no longer alive today. I think that would be a prediction that maybe God made a more complex world and we're living in a junkyard today.
Right, but you cannot predict what kinds of fossils we find, whereas evolution actually predicts their forms, what anatomy they have.
And let me modify that. I predict we will find fossils of just about everything that are huge compared to today. They have fossil ducks bigger than a horse. They have fossil dragonflies with 3-foot wingspan. I predict we'll find fossils of all kinds of things that are gigantic because the original creation was very different. And everything lived longer, grew bigger. So I can make predictions based on what I believe about the Bible.
They evolved.
Stuff in my folder.
No giant human fossils, though. We don't find any.
My folder would say the fact that we have fossils at all is evidence of a big flood. Fossils don't form today. A lot of animals die.
You said that the only thing you can tell from a fossil is that it died. So how do you know that it died in Noah's flood specifically?
Oh, I'm saying that's evidence that the rapid burial, because animals don't fossilize today. Show me where fossilization is taken. How many buffalo were killed out west in the last 200 years, and how many turned to fossils? Go find the fossil buffalo for me.
Fossils take longer than that to form. And there's no reason that the permineralization process would not be continuing. There's no reason that it would stop arbitrarily.
AJ, when animals die, they rot. The bones and everything rot. We got a pile of cow bones I used for my tour.
Yeah, you're right.
Years.
That's why most fossilize.
AJ, you've interrupted like 10 times in the last 2 minutes. Please let Kent finish his sentence, and then you can have an uninterrupted response. Go ahead, Kent.
If Grayson wants to use this, he predicts, evolution predicted we'd find missing links. That's not science. That's not proof. It's true. It's not proof evolution is true. I could say we could predict we'd find fossils in the ground of animals that are much bigger based on what the Bible says. And sure enough, we find them. Therefore, the Bible's true. Case closed. Let's go home.
Okay, so that's a great prediction because we can find tiny little elephants, not babies, but like fully grown elephants that are very, very small. And we can find lots of creatures that should be big but look small. We can find big creatures small creatures that look big. And here's the key, because you want to claim that it's like higher oxygen levels or something that was causing these creatures to be bigger, differences in the atmosphere. But when we go back in the geological record, we can actually find minerals that can only form in an anoxic environment, meaning very low to no oxygen. These minerals cannot form in the presence of oxygen. Therefore, your predictions based on your creationist model were debunked.
Okay, I'm going to jump in real quick. We're going to allow Kent to respond. And then before Grayson responded, Kent responded to AJ. So AJ, I'm sure you have a response too to what Kent said. So Kent, respond to Grayson. We'll hand it back to AJ. To be completely fair, AJ, I want to give you uninterrupted time to respond to what Kent said, and then we'll kind of go from there. So Kent, go ahead.
All right, I'm still trying frantically to decipher this. There's 40 different topics on the table, and it's supposed to be, where's the evidence for evolution? If his evidence for evolution is, we predicted we'd find fossils that look halfway between A and B, and we find one, I would say, Your Honor, that's just as much evidence that something went extinct. You don't know. We don't see any animals today producing, we don't see the orangutans changing to chimpanzees or anything non-orangutan. They line up these creatures in order right here, or this way, okay? And they claim they draw a line between them like they got a common ancestor. So that's not science. That's drawing a line on paper. That's artwork, okay? We don't see this happening. I could predict the God who created the universe made all kinds of different animals, and he likes variety, and he made them with the ability to produce a lot of variations. Some can stand the heat better, some can stand the cold better. Long-haired dog, short-haired dog. But I predict, the Bible says, they're always going to bring forth after their kind. And sure enough, that when we look in the world, that's all we've ever seen. So the Bible is
key distinction
the science.
Well, and Grayson, I want you to be able to respond, but AJ has been waiting patiently. So AJ, if you had something you wanted to respond to from earlier, guys, I just want to keep it as uninterrupted as possible. AJ, go ahead, and then Grayson will hand it to you if you don't mind. Go ahead, AJ.
Okay, and
You know, I apologize if I was over talking or anything. It was just I get excited talking about this stuff. So there have been a lot of fast topics. So I think I kind of forgot what Kent had responded to me about a second ago. But I wanted to reference something that he had said, something like gorillas we only see gorillas producing baby gorillas. And if I can quote my friend Gutsick Gibbon, I believe she said that if somebody's talking about human evolution and they say orangutan with the G at the end, they don't know what they're talking about. So are you saying that evolution suggests, or our side is suggesting that we see gorillas give birth to something that isn't a gorilla baby?
Does this picture taken from a modern textbook at high school level show a gorilla and a human having a common ancestor?
I would like an answer to my question before I answer that question.
Well, I'm saying the textbooks do teach gorilla came from something non-gorilla, because the chimpanzee is non-gorilla, the human is non-gorilla, but they got a line connecting them down to the bottom. So they do teach the gorilla did come from something somehow that was non-gorilla. That's imagination.
You said we've only observed gorillas having baby gorillas. So are you suggesting evolution teaches that babies give birth to something that's not a baby gorilla?
I'm saying this textbook shows something gave birth to a gorilla and it was a non-gorilla. So yes, going backwards in time, saying that. You guys are claiming by these charts here that all the creatures, here we go, all of these ape-like creatures have a common ancestor. Mm-hmm. So somebody did produce something that wasn't the same kind, didn't they?
No, because you're changing the topic. I want to talk about
you know that you can construct a tree like that for languages too, right? And you can say, oh, look, Spanish was coming from Latin. Does that mean that chart is implying that at one point a Latin-speaking person gave birth to a Spanish-speaking person? No, that's ridiculous. That is not what that chart is showing. You're misreading the chart if you think that.
And the way that you shield yourself from anybody responding to this obvious straw man is by pivoting to saying, oh, but they had a common ancestor millions of generations ago, when that's obviously different than what you're saying. But you know, it's the way that you obfuscate and dishonestly distract from the actual answering a direct question, because you can't.
As far as muddying the water with throwing languages in there, I think you'll find it's a lot of intelligent humans that are changing the languages, deciding to call it different words. Okay, that's a different story. These books are showing the kids, hey, we all had a common ancestor going back. Do you believe the monkeys, let's see, the apes, Australopithecines, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthal, all go back to a common ancestor. They draw a line on paper connecting them. What was that common ancestor? How did it change its clade to be all these other things? You guys believe it did. The whole purpose of this debate tonight is for you to show the evidence for why is it logical to teach kids that they are related to a strawberry and a banana and a snail. They put them all on paper with lines connecting them. Why would it be logical to say humans are related to a bacteria?
Well, if I can, because Donnie said that I would be able to respond like a while ago.
And then after that, I want to have a question and response, but you're all good.
Okay, we'll go Grayson and Kent, and then we'll go Amy and Kent. AJ, I appreciate those points.
Okay,
so Grayson,
Kent basically responded to what I was saying with Australopithecus as saying, yeah, God can create all kinds of creatures, so we might expect to find all kinds of skeletons and fossils of all these kinds of wacky, large, different creatures. Okay. So there's the claim, right? Now, the very interesting thing is that the actual fossils that we find in the ground, right, that have intermediate qualities, these mosaic fossils like Australopithecus, we only find them for creatures that are closely genetically related. There is a pattern. These hybrid creatures that we see in the fossil record are not randomly distributed like we would expect if God was just creating any kind of creatures he wanted. There's a specific pattern to them, and that pattern reflects present day genetic similarity, which is exactly what evolution predicts we should see in the fossil record. And it's exactly what we see. We see dog bears and bear dogs, and we don't see any dogs and bears below them in any of the layers below. So it literally is verified predictions of evolution.
And I just
when can I get in here?
Okay, you have some very obvious flaws in your logic here. You said We go in the fossil record. Grayson, there is no fossil record. There are fossils. There's not a record. None of them talk. None of them have a date on them. It's arbitrarily put on them by humans today, okay? Secondly, you said we find them in layers below. There you are stuck again with your geologic column, thinking that the layers below are older than the layers above. If the layers on top are younger, where did they come from? There is no geologic column. It was made up in 1830. It doesn't exist. It's fiction. So you're stuck with your training that I think destroyed your thinking process on this. There is no geologic. You can't go back in time. What we observe in science today, millions of farmers worldwide are producing plants or animals and having babies from them, you know, making them reproduce more. Farmers plant corn or green beans or crossbreed their cows, whatever. Every farmer in the history of humanity will tell you what you guys dream about on these charts isn't observable. They count on their cows making baby cows. They count on it. Happens every time. So you wish to believe something else? Fine. Keep your religion at home. Believe whatever you want. This isn't science. This isn't science. This isn't science. This isn't science. This is drawing lines on paper, connecting the bears and the dogs and the possums back to a common ancestor, which was a single-celled creature. I object to that. That's your religion. I wish you guys could admit it. Go ahead, Amy.
I'm just happy to hear someone who doesn't like religion as much as I do. And so I think we often get into something that I would call Pokemon evolution, is that we expect an animal to just evolve right before our eyes. And that is not what evolution dictates. Evolution is that populations of genes have a selection pressure like the environment, sex, or an artificial means. And so over time, you have different selection pressures. The example I use, if you would like an example of evolution, is in a forest where it has green leaves and there are blue and green butterflies, and they both have mutations that are neither harmful or beneficial. They just have this pigment. One by one, the blue butterflies get picked off because of the green butterflies' natural defense mechanism that they had no choice in selecting. And so it ends up with a forest of just green butterflies. It wasn't because the forest wanted there to be green butterflies. It was because of a pigment that just blended in natural and saved them from predators.
Okay. You're referring to an example of what would be called natural selection. Nature would select those that have better camouflage to survive. However, if you look at any forest, I think you will notice there are lots of beautiful colored creatures all over there that don't blend in and still survive. Now, Donnie, we've been going for 2 hours. I've been drinking water. I got to go potty. Could Sam or Donnie take over and talk about what she just did? Pokemon evolution is an example of how it's not science, okay? I don't expect.
Can anybody hear me? Sorry.
You believe it slowly turned into something else. Now, therefore, it's not observable. I'm gonna go potty, Donnie. You are
okay.
Sam,
Yeah,
I'll be right back. Okay.
I'm gonna jump in. We're gonna let Kent have a restroom break. Well deserved. We are almost at the 2 hour mark here. So Kent, take your time. Sam or C Brown. Actually, C Brown, why don't we start with you, brother? You've been waiting patiently, basically, since the beginning of the show. So feel free to give a little input and even respond to anything that Amy said. Go ahead.
Sure. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, can.
Yes.
Sound good.
All right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, Amy, I do want to address that the butterfly evolution you was talking about. That's kind of a lateral change where it's just you got different colors on the butterfly. Can you tell me the mechanism that that's created through evolution, through natural selection, mutations, anything that can give the genetic information for that caterpillar to transform into a butterfly?
It was a random process. The actual selection pressure was pigmentation versus predators. And so a green, a blue, a pink, it all depends on the environment. We could switch it up and say, why are polar bears white? Did polar bears want to be white? Did they choose that color? Well, it's probably because all of the other bears in the North Pole died. It's
I mean,
probably
I'm not talking about colors.
I
I'm
think
not
that what
talking
he was
about colors.
asking about was just mutation. I think that's what he
Right.
was.
I mean, can I ask a question again, real clearly to you? I didn't say anything about color. I refuted the whole thing about color. I'm referring to the fact that according to this is what happens. Butterflies. Okay, they start off as moths, right? They go through a cocoon status, and basically all but two cells, okay, is excreted. I mean, it's preserved, and from those two cells, you go through a process, and after the process is over with all genetic information, you have a butterfly. So instead of talking about how natural selection could select for certain colors, can go whatever, I'm not impressed with that. Can you please tell me how does evolution evolve the mechanisms, the protein sequences, the regulatory sequences that can allow all the information to be contained in the two cells, go through a cocoon state, and then as an end result, you
I
have a
did really
butterfly.
misunderstand your question. You're just asking about the metamorphosis process.
He's literally just asking the mechanism. It's mutation and natural selection, dude.
Oh, okay. So let's get down a little bit deeper on that. So basically, first of all, so how did it start off? What did it start off as a moth, and then some type of way it acquired that mechanism? Just because it seemed like
it is a similar mechanism in other insects.
No. Well, I'm asking you how you think that's possible because if everything wasn't correct, and all the information wasn't there, you'd be stuck in that two-cell cycle. How do you even evolve down to a two-cell cycle if that information wasn't already programmed into the system? And how do you evolve those type of systems? Just because you have to have protein sequence and regulatory networks to get that. So this is something you got to build from the ground up. So I don't know how random processes could build functionality of that nature from the ground up. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I am misunderstanding how something like a larva stage, sexual selection, it also wasn't framed in a question. You asked about something about networks, and yet what is the actual question? How is
okay? Let me try to say it one more time. I'm gonna ask you one more time. Okay, so let's look at what we have. We have a mechanism where we can have a moth. Okay, can evolve into a butterfly. Okay, so
no, two different, a moth and a butterfly, two different things. But
I'm sorry, my bad. I'm sorry, caterpillar. My bad, caterpillar. My bad. I'm sorry. That's probably how I
evolve into moths or butterflies. You were actually more accurate in saying that moths evolved into butterflies than
that's
your first
metamorphosis.
More accurate than your second.
Yeah, that's
okay. Right. Okay.
What they're doing.
Okay, so the metamorphosis process. How do you evolve a process? Random processes. Okay, you evolve a process like that where you can go from one complete stage to the next and be successful. It stands to reason that information needs to already been built into the code. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to successfully have that metamorphosis. How did evolution build metamorphosis process anyway?
So your question is just how did metamorphosis evolve?
In particular, let's talk about the butterfly metamorphosis. How does that work?
Well, I could take a stab at this. So
sure.
Okay, so there's some theories about how metamorphosis evolved because scientists can't really know for sure, but basically their theories are that around 300 million years ago, the earliest insects, most of them laid eggs, but eventually they started to mature slightly differently and they would start to metamorphosize, and this was really beneficial. And so it became something that a lot more insects did because it was beneficial to their survival. Now, how it actually happened, that shift, it's hard to say because we have to look at fossil evidence and insect anatomy and development. But That would, I guess, be my attempt at answering it.
Well, I posted a link in the private chat, a paper that goes through this whole thing, the evolution of insect metamorphosis. So it's a scientific article. C. Brown, I would encourage you to read it. But basically, metamorphosis is just changing the timing of the development process. So these insects were already going through a development process from like larval stages to an adult stage. And what the evolution of metamorphosis did is changing how those hormones were expressed to change the timing of that development process over time. So that's just like the broad picture answer to your question. But if you want specifics, I linked in the private chat a paper that goes over it in a lot of detail.
Okay,
and I also linked.
I
just want to put in there that I also linked a Scientific American article that talks about how egg evolution became such a larval into final stage metamorphosis process.
I don't feel that to be very satisfying, to be honest with you, because you know, you're citing a paper, but you go through that paper and it's gonna hypothesize, but it really can't tell you that. See, the thing is it's like, okay, let's say for example, you got bacteria. You know, bacteria, you have so many cycles because they evolve quickly. You never get anything different from bacteria. The same way, it doesn't make sense that a caterpillar could have all the information preloaded to evolve into a butterfly, and for it to be successful, to go down to 2 cells.
Never evolved into a butterfly. I already made that point earlier. Yes, actually, caterpillars do have all the genetic information to metamorphosize into a butterfly. All of the butterfly's information is encoded within the caterpillar in its DNA.
Okay, so I know they're not evolving. You know, we know that. But what I'm saying is metamorphosing into a butterfly. So I mean, so let's go from the ground up. How can a random process build such a complex network like that? Because you have to have regulatory features in there. You have to have master genes in there, and you want all this to happen randomly.
It's not a random process. It's deterministic. So mutations that happen in DNA, those are random, but they're going to be selected for because you're going to have some of those mutations. Most of them are not going to do anything. Some are harmful, but there's going to be some of them that are beneficial at a rate that's higher than 0%. And as long as that rate is higher than 0, some of them are going to get selected for. So it's not random, it's deterministic, and it's based on the environment and other factors that are called selection pressures.
Okay, right, but what you need, you need protein sequences to come out of nothing. Even before you get, hold on one second. Hold on for a second. Even before you get to the caterpillar, you know, you coming from, whether you want to come from bacteria or unicellular, you need protein sequences, and those protein sequences meet regulatory sequences. And I'm sorry, natural selection and mutations not that successful and not that smart. We don't get a lot of beneficial mutations, and most of the time you get a mutation that does a atomical change to the structure of a creature. Most of the times it's not a good mutation. It's deleterious.
Sometimes it's good.
Yeah, that was a lot of empty claims.
Yeah, and I also don't understand. You seem marvelized by the metamorphosis process, but that wasn't actually an answer or a question to anything that I had to say. Kind of avoided a direct example of evolution taking place in the forest. Yet with metamorphosis, we kind of see a lot of the processes of evolution actually going through. It's not a supernatural process. It's not a creation process. And so what do you have something wrong with my one isolated example of evolution happening? And then do you think that the metamorphosis process is supernatural?
Hey, you guys, we're gonna let C. Brown one moment. We'll let you answer that really quick, but then Kent, I believe Kent's gonna be running out of time here. So while he's still here, we'd like to let him finish this question, perhaps, and then we'll keep going at it. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let me just address Amy real quickly. I'll give it back to Ken. Amy, I got no problem with those little simple things that you want to call evolution, and and some of that is epigenetic regulation, whatever. I got no problem with that. It's when you want the fantastic things to happen. That's what I got a problem with. Getting protein sequences out of nothing, right? It didn't have random mutations, select them and hold them for what reason? Because say, for example, when you're building systems, all the systems need to be in place at the same time. You can't have one system, two systems, and then the natural selection hold that, and then waiting for the next one to come about. Because everything, the reason why it looks designed, because it is designed. So I have no problem with the butterfly analogy that you said. I have no problem at all with that.
No,
it's
we've
the big
seen
thing I got a problem with.
Hold on, Grayson. We're gonna let C Brown have the last word on this. Don't worry. I mean, you'll be here, and you guys can go back. But James W has been patiently waiting to get his claws sunk into Dr. Kent. So now's your chance, James. You got that evidence. I know
How
it.
you doing?
James, good to have you.
Doing
Glad that you joined our evolution open mic. So where is or what is the best evidence for evolution for Kent? And you guys can go back and forth a little bit on it. I appreciate your patience. You've basically been waiting since close to the beginning, James. So go ahead.
Kent, I remember towards the beginning of the stream, Grayson, you had said there is never new information, there's no beneficial mutations. You mutation that allowed for the bacteria to digest nylon. You're included that could ever lead to big changes. So you shifted the goalpost there, but all we ever evolution actually says is that every organism is just a slightly modified version of its parents. And then we take that, we look at the fossil record, we see animals in the past that were different than animals today. So biological extrapolation is not too hard to connect what's going on here.
James, you're really kind of robotic. So we can hear.
Is it?
Kent, I'm not sure how much you heard of that, but at least on my end, he was a little robotic. I see Grayson shaking his head, so I think you might be a little robotic. But Kent, if you heard any of that, go ahead.
I heard about maybe 10% of it, and all he's doing is throwing out 10 topics at once. As far as the bacteria able to digest nylon, which wasn't invented until recently, that's an interesting point. Is that actually evolution? Is that process going to count? Is that going to turn a single-cell creature to a whale and a human? Was new information added? If that was, I'll do some research on that. I think I saw articles on that on several websites claiming that no, it's not new information at all. But maybe even if it is, that'd be one example, and you would need trillions of examples to change an amoeba or a protozoa or a single-cell creature to a human or a whale, not just one. Secondly, they count on billions of years. This is their God. Time is their God. If you give it enough time, it'll happen. Oh yeah, go back in the fossil record. I keep saying there is no fossil record, and you can't go back into it. Okay. So James, I don't know what your evidence for evolution is. That Amy, I meant to make a point for Amy. Amy, you talk about butterflies that blend in, camouflage, they survive. Natural selection, it's only selecting a butterfly that's already really complicated to exist. It didn't create the butterfly. That process of selecting a green butterfly over a blue one in a forest that's green is not going to create the butterfly. It only selects. Well, you guys don't get it. Natural selection is a selective process. I could select all the books in my library that have a blue cover and take them all out. I didn't create the book. I just selected those books. Natural selection selects, artificial selection selects. Neither of those create anything. Go ahead.
Not by themselves.
And we're able to go all the way back in the geologic column. We are able to see complex organisms becoming more simple. We're able to see water organisms going onto land, becoming like frogs, and then being able to just walk on land, and then becoming mammals. We're able to see these. And if we were to ever to find a complex animal in a wrong geological column, it would help prove creationism. It would help disprove evolution, but we don't.
Now, Kent's incredulous to that. He doesn't see it, but that doesn't change the reality of it, that it's happened. It's in the rocks of the earth. Just because he doesn't want to accept it as...
Yeah,
just because he doesn't want to accept reasons.
So if you find a fossil of an animal in a particular rock layer, which I've said those layers all formed in 1 year, there is no geologic column. It doesn't exist. Okay, you guys make that up, and it's your Bible. I understand. You're defending it. That's great. But finding an animal and saying we never find one in the wrong layer, well, who's deciding what that layer is called? There are about 15 different layers in the so-called geologic column of limestone. How do you know the difference between Jurassic limestone and Cretaceous limestone, and Cenozoic and Mesozoic? How do you know the difference? By the fossils they contain. So they're using the fossils to determine what the layers are and using the layers to determine what age the fossils are. It's complete circular reasoning. Any freshman law student would tear that up in a court of law. You guys, you need to give it up. There is no geologic column. All those layers formed in one flood. You're willingly ignorant, like the Bible said would happen at the end of time, willingly ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment of God. This has been over 2 hours. I had to start early today. It's been a long day. Donnie, 2 hours is enough for me to schedule another one. I'll do them as often as you want, but I think 2 hours is about my max. I wear out.
Wait,
okay.
Kent, before you go, can I just answer the question? Because you've asked it 3 times already in this discussion. You ask it all the time. Where do the layers come from? Is it from space?
Yes, please.
No, it is not. It is from erosion, deposition, and volcanic eruptions. There you go. That's your answer.
Wait.
So you can stop asking.
Grayson. And that makes them a different age. Grayson. So when it's erosion and redeposition, it now becomes a different age. Is that what you're saying?
You are dating the age of the formation of the layer, yes.
So how did it become a different age?
Because it formed. Once the layer formed, then it became a closed system, and that is what we are dating.
So if I get 4.6 billion year old rock to melt and come out through a volcano, fly over, land someplace, it's no longer 4.6 billion years old.
The layer is just formed, yes.
Can I ask a question?
And this is exactly the very first thing that I brought in, was saying that you are a different age than me, even though the material that makes up our body is the same age. That is why I brought up that point, is because the formation of the layers is what we are dating. Yes, you should acknowledge this, because you are a different age than I am. That's all the evidence that you should need, that you can date the formation of something without dating the actual material that makes it up.
Yeah. Okay, let me jump in real quick. Actually, AJ, before you do, Ken, if there's anything you want to respond to, but we are over the two-hour mark. We are going to continue the open mic, but for Kent, we're going to allow him to obviously get out of here at the 2-hour mark. Ken, I appreciate your time. But Ken, if you did want to have anything in terms of concluding words there, go ahead.
Well, as I showed from the polystrate trees, a lot of the layers have to be within 1 year of each other. Why not all of them in 1 year, in a 1 year flood? Noah was in the ark for a little over a year. Parts of the world might have only been covered for a few months. I don't know. But the tidal pumping up and down with the moon would cause the layers to go, the water to go sideways very rapidly, depending upon your latitude. At the equator, 1,037.6 miles an hour. At the North Pole, 0. So the turbulence created during that flood is the most logical explanation for all of the layers that we see. And that would explain very quickly why we see polystrata fossils. It answers very simply. You guys want, and it would also explain why animals tend to be sorted a little bit. They're probably sorted based upon body density, mobility, intelligence, or habitat. Clams are going to be found at the bottom. Clams are already at the bottom when the flood starts. But you see clams at the bottom and interpret they evolved first. Birds are found on top because they're the last ones to drown in a flood. So of course they're on top. But you see clams on the bottom, birds on top, and you imagine a sequence of them changing from one to the other. Neither could be proven scientifically, I suppose. What we do observe is clams always make baby clams without exception, and birds always make baby birds without exception. We don't ever observe any animal or plant changing to anything else. You can imagine all you want. You and SpongeBob go have a party, but it's not science. That's all I've been saying all along. You guys are welcome to your religion, but quit calling it science. It's not science to put these charts in the books and say all the animals have a common ancestor and draw lines on paper between the human, the bird, and the reptile, and the ladybug, and the pine tree. This isn't science. That's all. You can believe it, and you might have some evidence to support it, like the lawyers, you're putting evidence in your file. You think this supports your particular interpretation, and I could put evidence in my file. That's what every lawyer, every courtroom in the world does that every day.
And you've lost every lawsuit you've been in.
Oh, here we go. Ad hominem, change the subject. We shall see, okay? Anyway.
Can I ask a question? Just I promise I'll be fast. I want to respect your time, Kent. But so just on the topic of what Grayson was talking about the layers. So Mount Rushmore was completed in 1927. So Kent, how old would you say Mount Rushmore is?
Oh, it eroded over millions and millions of years. It just happened to form those faces on there. It took billions of years for the water and the wind and the erosion to make Mount Rushmore was not designed. There's no question. It happened by chance.
That's not what I said. Obviously, can you answer the question seriously?
Wait. Obviously, somebody designed Mount Rushmore.
Yeah,
but nobody designed a cell in your body with 100 trillion atoms.
How old do you think Mount Rushmore is, Kent?
The mountain itself all formed at the creation 6,000 years ago. It got eroded badly into that position and uplifted during Noah's flood. And then somebody in the 1920s decided to carve faces on it. What would you like to know?
So it's because I would suggest that it's since it's a sculpture, that it's not millions of years old. So
So
okay.
the presidents that are depicted on there, they are not millions of years old. You're admitting to that, right? Lincoln, Washington
is not millions of years old.
The sculpture is not millions of years old, but the rock they carved into is millions of years old, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not billions of years old because 4.6 billion years ago when the Earth formed. Could it be 13.772 billion years ago? Was all that rock in Mount Rushmore contained in that dot, smaller than a period?
No, because there was no matter at the very earliest time of the Big Bang.
There was no matter. So where did matter come from?
When the universe cooled down enough for protons to coalesce, you had matter forming because atoms and molecules could now form. But
you disagree that by MC squared?
Well, gentlemen, let me jump in real quick because I do want to respect Kent's time. He gave us over 2 hours for this epic open mic discussion on evolution. But I will say we are currently scheduling Grayson and Kent for the much anticipated round 3 endgame debate. Amy, you and Kent, we are currently setting up a debate as well. And James W. So we've got lots of debates and future discussions to look forward to. Dr. Dan, if he'd like to set up a debate, we can do that as well. We'll make 2023 the year of debate. So Kent, I appreciate you doing this, brother. Any final words, final thoughts?
Yep, I'm tired. Good night.
Okay, you get some sleep, Kent.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Hovind.
Okay, Kent. God bless. Well,
the
that
Big Bang, huh? Is that
well, that 2 hours really flew by, but we can continue the open mic. I'll probably stick around for a little bit before I get some dinner in me. But okay, I know C. Brown was Sam. Anybody who just kind of wants to pick a point or a topic that has been discussed over the last 2 hours. Feel free to do so. I know there was a lot discussed, and there's probably a lot people want to comment on. So go ahead. Anyone want to jump in?
How do evolutionists define evolution?
I would say
change in allele frequencies in a population over time.
Heritable changes in populations of animals, as in every child is slightly different than their parents because of mutations. And
descent with modification.
Yeah.
That's the definition of evolution?
Yeah.
Yes. They oftentimes creationists will say they will take evolution, they'll define it as adaptation. They'll go, well, everyone believes in that. We're like, we know, we teach it in biology course.
Or they'll tack a bunch of stuff onto it like Kent does because he has to, by saying evolution is a religion, he has to add on, he has to make it go back to the beginning of the universe to conflate it with his his Christian religion, which starts at the creation of the universe. So smoke screen.
They like to play games with definitions instead of talking
what's
about
your religion?
Evidence.
I don't
so
have
Dave,
a religion.
So Dave, you asked them what their definition of evolution.
Yeah, they were
is.
talking all over each other. I still don't have it straightened out. I really didn't understand any of it. It sounds like
their definition for biological evolution was changes in allele frequencies in populations over time or generations. Did you have a follow up to that?
Personally, I don't like that definition. That's just me.
They don't agree with each other. I'm just watching them. I like to watch them.
Well, we don't have to agree with each other.
Because I guess that's how evolution works. It's just it's.
Can I ask for your
kind
definition
of like a Maytag
of
wash
evolution?
machine. You kind of throw it in there and see how it comes out. You know?
Yeah, I don't think Atheist Junior was saying that that definition is not true. He just likes another
Yeah,
definition.
I wasn't saying it wasn't true. I just feel like you know, a lot of people don't have a colloquial or a, I don't know what the word is, but like a common sense understanding of evolution or science. And I think, you know, when somebody asks what's the definition of evolution, and like if they're asking like a scientist or something, and they say it's a change in allele frequencies. Okay, well, what is an allele? I don't know what that is. Like, I think what Grayson, what you said, you worded it a lot better than I did, but I think that's a much better definition. It's like
descent with modification.
Yeah,
it's 3 words.
I think that's a better one.
And pretty much everyone will agree with that definition. So, Dave, did you have a point that you were trying to make when you were asking that, or
what's up? What now? These frequencies you were talking about, are they like measured in hertz?
No, it's a statistical frequency, a sampling of a population.
Ladies and gentlemen, the K through 12 education system.
What?
Oh no, I'm sorry, it wasn't you.
They're still talking all over each other. You can't, you know, I still haven't, you know, it's an interesting group of people that like to talk all over each other.
Well, now I'm talking over you, but
well, that happens when you have 9 people in a room
and lag.
Yes.
And dogs.
And dog. I have someone who's coming home, and so Cooper is saying hi to them.
I mean, what's the meaning of the word frequency? It's just how often something happens, right?
So would you consider biological evolution? That's what you're defining, right? How would you incorporate LGBTQIAPP into that equation?
Before we even go on to that, before we go on to identity politics, I just want to give mine before you got in there, because it's very similar to theirs, but I just use populations of genes, have a selection pressure like the environment, sex, or artificial means. And so I just wanted to know, I mean, you could pick any 3 because they're all very similar. Do you have a go-to definition of evolution?
I believe in evolution.
Oh, then what?
No, you don't. No, you don't.
I mean, maybe. I mean, if you
I'm
do,
a meteorologist.
I
I know all about the evolution of thunderstorms and tornadoes and mesoscale convective systems and frontogenic forcing and upper level dynamics.
Cool.
Oh, really? What's the weather going to be like tomorrow then?
Tornadoes.
Oh, I'll tell you what your weather's going to be. You're going to have weather whether you like it or not.
And you have believe in biological evolution, right?
No, he doesn't, Amy.
Well, I just want to like. What is your definition of biological evolution?
He doesn't have a definition. I don't know why we're asking.
I asked you the definition. That's why I don't have.
You actually
I don't have a definition of bio. Why would I have a definition of biological evolution when I know?
Okay, let's get back on track here. We're going to get back on track here, Dave. I feel like you're just in here to troll. So
I agree.
We're going to get you out of here.
Wow.
Is there anything else on the table over the last? I feel like that whole last 8 minutes was a bit of a waste of time. So is there anybody else?
Hey, let me ask I want to ask a question. I want to ask a question. I want to, you know, it seems like the definition of evolution is kind of flexible. Okay, because I'm pretty sure, like Grayson, you remember that? I think it was, I don't know if it was 2013, something like that. They had to have a conference to talk about evolution because they wanted to, you know, they were having a fight among the community, among scientists, you know, what they felt about evolution. It needed to be extended. You need to incorporate more of the data that they're finding out when they're finding out things like junk DNA, and you're finding out that the cell is more complex than it was supposed to be, you know, because considering that evolution needs to be a random process, and it really needs to be ungodlike if you want to say it's completely, if you don't have an intelligent design behind it. So they had the big conference basically to try to figure out what can we really call evolution, so we can incorporate. I'm sorry.
I'm just keep on sending love. Creationist Con 2017.
No. It wasn't creation. This was held by the Royal Society. The Royal Society? Yeah, it had nothing to do with creation. They did invite a couple of intelligent design advocates there because they wanted to kind of let them come in there, and some of them was actually thinking about letting intelligent design into the door. but then you got the radical ones who wanted to stick to the basic evolution because they didn't want God's hand into the door. So considering the fact that evolution changed all the time, what do you guys think about that? The meaning has to constantly change.
I would say that it doesn't change all the time, and that the conversation that AtheistJunior and Grayson were trying to say is that AJ is like, listen, these creationists don't know what biologists are talking about, so maybe we should simplify it more. That was the conversation they were just having, because both of their definitions are correct, and so are mine. It's talking about
that's incorrect.
Means and being selected, and so I don't know about complexity. We're trying to simplify it, though.
I think
that's incorrect. That's completely incorrect.
That's completely incorrect. I actually think that it's not a bad question in a way, because you could say that the definition has changed over the years only because when you had what we called Darwinian evolution, which is an outdated term, but when Darwin learned about natural selection, they didn't even understand genetics yet because they didn't have Mendelian genetics. He hadn't done his experiments with pea pods, and they've added so many different fields onto it, where today we call it something called the modern synthesis, where you have other fields like genetics, epigenetics, evo, devo, and all these other things that are within the sphere, and tangential stuff like abiogenesis, which is related to it, but it's not part of the same theory. So that could be why the definition is perceived as changing, but it's not because, it's inaccurate. It's just because we've understood more about this topic, because evolution is a very complex topic.
And both of their definitions were correct.
Let me ask.
Okay, but see,
what would be another mechanism if abiogenesis isn't true? What would that be?
Abiogenesis is not a mechanism. There are multiple mechanisms.
A mechanism to create life from non-life.
Hey, redefine. Like, can you stop talking over me? Thank you.
Grayson, hold on. So the question was for AJ. If you want to have a semantic objection, that's fine. You can call it what you want. But if abiogenesis isn't necessary for your model, what would be an alternative? What would that be?
I didn't say it wasn't necessary. I just said they're not part of the same theory.
But I'm asking you, what if abiogenesis is not part of the theory, what would be the alternative? What would it be? Is there something else?
It's not that there's an alternative. Like, there has to be something in its place. They're just, like I said, they're tangential, and obviously they're both interesting to study. But I say that they're not part of the same theory because creationists have lied about this and constantly said that they are the same thing, because specifically we understand evolution much better than we do abiogenesis.
Yeah, I feel like you're dodging the question. Is abiogenesis necessary?
Well, this is not an abiogenesis stream. The topic is not abiogenesis. It's evolution.
Hold on. So the question. So that's another dodge. So we're dodging.
That's not a dodge. Okay. You're bringing up irrelevant.
I'll answer that question.
Hold on, you guys. Simmer down. I have been sitting here patiently. More you guys have.
You're asking stuff that's not the topic.
So again, the question is, well, if it is directly related, then it is part of the topic.
It's not part of the topic.
Grayson, calm down.
Hold on, Grayson. Hold on.
So AJ brought it up. AJ brought it up, and I'm asking for clarification. So the question is simple. Since AJ is trying to separate the two, I'm just asking if there is an alternative. Because if there isn't an alternative, then it's necessary.
So
which is it?
Seems that abiogenesis is necessary for both evolution and creationism, and so I don't know why we're questioning it. The evolutionists say something, life came from non-life. The creationists say life came from non-life. So do you have an example?
Yeah, so Amy, you're equivocating. You're equivocating when the creationists are. Hold on, let me answer the question. So when the creationist is talking about abiogenesis, we are talking about something that is distinctly different. Abiogenesis in the context of evolution. Hold on. Abiogenesis in the context of evolution is a naturalistic methodology or system.
Why couldn't God have done abiogenesis?
So again, I feel like you're dodging. Okay,
I'm asking you, why couldn't God have done abiogenesis?
So the question is, well, we'll talk about that later, but we're not. This is not what we're talking about now. The question is posed for you guys.
Oh, now it's off topic.
So this is a red herring. So I've gotten 3 red herrings so far, but no
what you're asking is a red herring.
Amy came closest. I don't know why you guys keep interrupting me. Okay, let me ask my question. Is that too much to ask? I love a dumpster fire, but I just want to get an answer.
You're not asking your question.
Abiogenesis. I'll try again. If abiogenesis isn't necessary for your model, what would be an alternative?
Okay, I think I misunderstood the question the first time I answered it. So are you saying necessary as in, well, you have to have animals existing for them to evolve? Is that what you mean?
Okay, you guys have a type of naturalistic worldview where these processes are explained naturalistically. And the naturalistic explanation for abiogenesis has a starting point, or I'm sorry, the naturalistic explanation, which is evolution, has a starting point that is abiogenesis. You, AJ, you tried to separate the two. If you separate the two, what you're saying is abiogenesis isn't necessary. So if it is not necessary, what would an alternative be?
So saying that I'm separating implies that they were part of the same scientific theory. That's what I said, that they're not part of the same scientific theory specifically. Not that they aren't both related in terms of life on Earth and in terms of studying life and the evolution and biodiversity of life and where life came from. But specifically when we're talking about the theory of evolution, biological evolution, I have to say abiogenesis isn't part of it because, like I said, creationists have lied about this and tacked it on because we don't know specifically what, because with abiogenesis, there are multiple explanations for it that could individually be true or could concurrently have happened. We're not sure which of these explanations happened, but
what would those be? That's what I'm asking. You're saying
it's also okay to say I don't know.
Yeah, let's stop.
You're saying there's multiple explanations. I'm saying what would those be?
Well, you have like undersea vents. You have what Darwin called the warm little pond. The idea of volcanic oceans near volcanic.
You're saying there's multiple explanations for abiogenesis.
Yeah, there's multiple theories on how life might have originated under the umbrella term abiogenesis.
And abiogenesis seems to be necessary. And so if abiogenesis seems to be necessary, yes, as in we don't have any other explanation how life could come from life.
Can you defend that, Amy?
We only have naturalistic. We only have us. We have no other procedural. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask.
We live in the
hold on.
circumstellar habitable zone.
Let's see if you can defend that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Grayson, you know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, it's going to be off topic. It's not going to be.
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, I mean, straight to hell.
So listen, Amy made a positive claim, as well as AJ did, that this is the only explanation. There isn't another one.
Yes.
However,
creationism
if it is the case that God exists, then your statement is false.
No,
it's a big if.
You guys are using different definitions. How did you clear this up? Because you guys are using different definitions. Amy is saying that God could have done abiogenesis, and you are saying, Sam, that if abiogenesis, if God did it, then by definition it's not abiogenesis. You guys are using different definitions.
Listen.
I would say by definition, the Abrahamic God does abiogenesis, makes people out of clay, and basically wills it into being.
Yeah, but you don't believe that, don't you?
Hold on.
No,
so what you guys are doing?
Exactly.
Hold on.
But they do. They believe in an abiogenesis.
Yeah, what's happening again is you guys are dodging and you're pivoting back onto my worldview. Your worldview is independent. You made a claim on your terms that there is no other explanation. Okay.
Yes,
now you need to defend. Hold on. You need to defend that claim without pointing to me. Let's just assume that I believe pixies did it. Okay. What I believe is not relevant. Okay. Now, on your terms, it could be that there is a God who created life. But in order for your statement to be defensible, you're going to have to explain to me how that isn't the case.
Sure. We live In the circumstellar habitable
I'm
zone,
waiting.
we have lots of carbon. We have lots of liquid water. We actually have a planet that allows life to thrive without it freezing or burning. And so
Grayson,
this looks like a planet
that I've made
where
now?
abiogenesis would take place. It's good reason why abiogenesis doesn't take place on Pluto.
I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that.
I am.
Okay, I'm saying that you have a belief system where abiogenesis is plausible, but you made a claim that would entail there is no God. Because if there is a God, then abiogenesis isn't the only option. You said it was.
Okay.
No,
so
on
your terms,
that's the opposite of my claim. That's the opposite of my claim, though. Make sure you say my claim right.
I don't think you're paying. I don't think you're paying
Stop
attention.
interrupting her, Sam. You're interrupting.
But let's make sure. On Sam's claim, he's saying abiogenesis happened, and on my claim, I am saying abiogenesis. So we have two abiogenesis.
No.
Sam's abiogenesis and my abiogenesis, and we're trying to figure out which abiogenesis happened.
Okay, one of you guys is going to have to change your definition for like operative senses in this conversation. You can't keep having a debate where you are using different words to mean like you're using the same word to mean two different things. You cannot continue. One of you will have to change your definition.
It's called an equivocation fallacy, and I've already called out camp naturalism on that. And I explained that when we use that
just
word,
clarify.
we are
When
using
you say
a fundamentally different
Sam,
understanding.
Wait, I can clarify this. Just clarify. When you are using the term abiogenesis,
I'm not
you are
using
exclusively referring to only naturalistic mechanisms. If you can clarify that, you two can actually agree and move on to a more productive conversation.
Okay,
So just clarify that.
Listen. I'm gonna be really clear. Again, what I believe as a Christian is not relevant. We're not talking about that.
You're asking about abiogenesis.
Hold
you
on,
need to
Grayson.
clarify your
Hold on.
term.
This is the problem. Every time you guys pivot to my belief, you're dodging.
You're asking the question.
I'm asking
It is totally
you.
fair for somebody to ask you to clarify terms you're using in your question. It's not like we're turning this back around on your worldview. We are asking you to clarify your own question you asked.
Okay.
Yeah, you
So
said
you
that if
I'm
God
gonna
exists,
ask
that
my
would
question
disprove
only in a naturalistic way.
abiogenesis.
Supernatural explanations will not count as abiogenesis under your definition for the sake of this conversation. Let's move forward.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a question one more time so you guys pay attention. Okay, there's 4 of you guys in here now, right? Okay, you believe abiogenesis on your terms, life from non-life by naturalistic processes. Okay. Now, but Amy didn't say that was one of 2 options.
No, well,
Okay.
so if we eliminate the God,
hold on.
let me just say,
you know what? You guys are being really very.
You did make a pause.
Yeah, you paused for a
I'll
while,
hand it back over to you.
Can I get some moderation? Can I just ask my question? Okay. Amy didn't say that there was 2 options, and one of them was abiogenesis. That's not what you said. Amy made a positive claim that abiogenesis is the only option. In order for that to be true, God must be false.
No, she's using a different definition than you. You know that.
Simmer down.
You are not understanding this, Sam.
God must be false. Because if God does exist, then there is another option.
No, God did abiogenesis. That's still abiogenesis.
Now you're equivocating
Why aren't you understanding
after
that?
you corrected yourself. This is too
So
funny.
I think the term
Let Amy say what she thinks.
be that in science we have the best current explanation that's the most parsimonious.
And so let's just separate this out, because I don't think that your God created abiogenesis. I don't think that your option is an available option.
That's a claim, right?
So
that's a defensible claim, right?
Saying
yes,
that
we can go into why a God doesn't exist, but I wanted to go into why. So why your claim is an abiogenesis claim? Do you believe that your God created life from non-life?
I can be an atheist asking you this question.
I agree, Senator. Please, can you answer the question?
I just want to know how you falsified God. That's all I want to know.
Okay,
want
that's
you
a
to
completely
defend
different
your
subject.
claim.
If you want to know how I falsified God,
Yeah.
besides there's no good evidence for God, I would talk about how
Oh, really?
consciousness works, how the materialistic element needs a brain, needs a physical body, and how your God is basically a plot device that has no other reason to exist but for us.
Okay,
Don't take the bait,
so
Amy.
Amy, that's entirely arbitrary, and Grayson
Yes,
can
mine.
probably correct you
God.
on that now that Grayson and I have had this conversation. Okay, all you're saying is you have a worldview that interprets the data a certain way, and you have an opinion about it. But what we can do, since there's multiple atheists in this room, now we can actually do an internal critique on your guys' worldview and see if it can even account for the science that's being done. Should we do that?
Sure, but can you answer if God created something out of non-life and thus you believe in abiogenesis?
Grayson corrected you on this.
No, he actually said that you're wrong. You're not having a good. We actually have different definitions that we're not able to communicate because we have separate definitions.
Yeah, you
That's
continue
what he said.
It's called an equivocation fallacy.
So can you answer the question, Senator?
Do I believe in abiogenesis as defined by naturalism?
Your God created life from non-life.
Yeah, we call that creation, not abiogenesis.
There you go.
Right.
Different
that's not the
flavor.
same thing.
Baskin-Robbins dairy.
I mean, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing by no stretch of the imagination.
Yeah,
I might point out real quick.
Okay, so now I can ask the atheists in the room. I'd like to ask just a couple of questions, and you guys can join forces and answer. Okay, are conclusions in science derived from the laws of nature?
Sure.
Are those laws
descriptive?
Are those laws
descriptive?
They're descriptive, so they don't actually exist.